Romeo, oh Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Good question, Juliet, and I wish I knew the answer. To be totally honest, there was never a point where I said to myself, Clay Jensen, he's the one. I'm not even sure how much of the real Clay Jensen I got to know over the years. Most of what I knew was secondhand information, and that's why I wanted to know him better. Because everything I heard, and I mean everything, was good. It was one of those things where once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. Kristen Renard, for example, she always wears black. Black pants or black shoes, black shirt. If it's a black jacket and that's the only black she's wearing, she won't take it off all day. The next time you see her, you'll notice it, and then you won't be able to stop noticing it. Steve Oliver's the same way. Whenever he raises his hand to say something or ask a question, he always begins with the words, all right. Mr. Oliver, all right, if Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. Mr. Oliver, all right, I got 76.1225. Mr. Oliver, all right, can I have a hall pass? Seriously, every time. And now you'll notice it too. Every time. Overhearing gossip about Clay became a similar distraction, and like I said, I didn't know him very well, but my ears perked up whenever I heard his name. I guess I wanted to hear something, anything, juicy. Not because I wanted to spread gossip. I just couldn't believe someone could be that good. If he actually was that good, wonderful, great. But it became a personal game of mine. How long could I go on hearing nothing but good things about Clay Jensen? Normally, when a person has a stellar image, another person's waiting in the wings to tear them apart. They're waiting for that one fatal flaw to expose itself. But not with Clay. I hope this tape doesn't make you run out and dig for that deep, dark, and dirty secret of his. Which I'm sure is there. At least one or two of them, right? But wait, isn't that what you're doing, Hannah? You're setting him up as Mr. Perfect only to tear him down. You, Hannah Baker, were the one waiting in the wings, waiting for a flaw, and you found it. And now you can't wait to tell everyone what it is and ruin his image. To which I say, no. And I hope you're not disappointed. I hope you aren't just listening, salivating for gossip. I hope these tapes mean more to you than that. Clay, honey, your name does not belong on this list. You don't belong in the same way as the others. It's like that song. One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. And that's you, Clay. But you need to be here if I'm going to tell my story. To tell it more completely. Yes, there are some major gaps in my story. Some parts I just couldn't figure out how to tell, or couldn't bring myself to say out loud. Events that I haven't come to grips with, that I'll never come to grips with. And if I never have to say them out loud, then I never have to think them all the way through. But does that diminish any of your stories? Are your stories any less meaningful because I'm not telling you everything? Actually, it magnifies them. You don't know what went on in the rest of my life, at home, even at school. You don't know what goes on in anyone's life but your own, and when you mess with one part of a person's life, you're not messing with just that part. Unfortunately, you can't be that precise and selective. When you mess with one part of a person's life, you're messing with their entire life. Everything affects everything. The next few stories are centered around one night. They're centered around our night, Clay. And you know what I mean by our night because through all the years we've spent going to the same school or working together at the movie theater, there's only one night when we connected. When we really connected. That night as well drags many of you into this story. One of you for the second time. A random night that none of you can take back. Hopefully no one will hear these tapes except for those of you on this list. Leaving any changes they bring to your lives completely up to you. Of course, if the tapes do get out, you'll have to deal with consequences completely out of your control. So I sincerely hope you're passing them on. For some of you, those consequences may be minimal, maybe shame or embarrassment, but for others, it's hard to say. A lost job? Jail time? Let's keep this between us, shall we? So, Clay, I wasn't even supposed to be at that party. I was invited, but I wasn't supposed to be there. My grades were slipping pretty fast. My parents asked for progress reports every week from my teachers, and when none of them came back with improvements, I was grounded. For me, grounded meant that I had 1 hour to get home from school. 1 hour being my only free time until I brought those grades up. During one of my Clay Jensen gossip moments, I found out that you were going to be at that party. What? Clay Jensen at a party? Unheard of. Not only was that my first thought, that's what the people around me were talking about too. No one could figure out why they never saw you at parties. Of course, they had all sorts of theories. But guess what? That's right, none of them were bad. As you know, since Tyler's not tall enough to peep through a second-story window, sneaking out of my bedroom wasn't hard to do. And that night, I just had to do it. But don't jump to conclusions. I've snuck out of my house before that night. Only twice. Okay, 3 times. Maybe 4. Tops. For those of you who don't know which party I'm talking about, there's a red star on your mat. A big, fat red star completely filled in. C6. 512 Cottonwood. Ah, so now you know. Now some of you know exactly where you fit in. But you'll have to wait until your name pops up to hear what I'm going to tell, to hear how much I tell. That night, I decided that walking to the party would be nice. Relaxing. We had a lot of rain that week, and I remember the clouds were still hanging low and thick. The air was warm for that time of night, too. My absolute favorite type of weather. Pure magic. It's funny, walking by the houses on my way to the party, it felt like life held so many possibilities. Limitless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope? Well, I guess I misread things a bit. It was simply the calm before the storm. I wore a black skirt with a matching hooded pullover, and on my way there, I took a 3-block detour to my old house, the one I lived in when we first moved to town. The first red star from the first side of the first tape. The porch light was on, and in the garage, a car's engine was running, but the garage door was shut. I stopped walking, and for what seemed like several minutes, just watched from the sidewalk, mesmerized. Another family in my house. I had no idea who they were or what they were like, what their lives were like. The garage door began to lift, and in the glow of the red taillights, the silhouette of a man pushed the heavy door all the way up. He got in the car, backed it down the driveway, and drove off. Why he didn't stop, why he didn't ask why I was standing there at his house, I don't know. Maybe he thought I was waiting for him to back out of the driveway before continuing on my merry way. But whatever the reason, it felt surreal. 2 people, me and him, 1 house. Yet he drove away with no idea of his link to me, the girl on the sidewalk. And for some reason, at that moment, the air felt heavy, filled with loneliness. And that loneliness stayed with me through the rest of the night. Even the best moments of the night were affected by that one incident, by that non-incident in front of my old house. His lack of interest in me was a reminder. Even though I had a history in that house, it didn't matter. You can't go back to how things were, how you thought they were. All you really have is now. Which explains my overreaction, Clay. And that's why I'll get these tapes. To explain. To say I'm sorry. The party was well underway by the time I got there. Most people, unlike me, didn't have to wait for their parents to fall asleep. The usual crowd hung out by the front door of the party, drunk out of their minds, greeting everyone with a raised cup of beer. I would think Hannah would be a hard name to slur, but these guys did it pretty well. Half of them kept repeating my name, trying to get it right, while the other half laughed. But they were harmless. Fun drunks make a nice addition to any party, not looking to fight, not looking to score, just looking to get drunk and laugh. The music was loud and no one was dancing. It could have been any party, except for one thing. Clay Jensen. I'm sure you heard a lot of sarcastic remarks when you first arrived, but by the time I got there, to everyone else, you were just a part of the party. But unlike everyone else, you were the whole reason I came. With everything going on in my life, going on in my head, I wanted to talk with you. Really talk, just once. A chance we never seem to get at school or at work. A chance to ask, who are you? And as I stood in the kitchen, in line to fill my cup for the first time, you walked up behind me. Hannah Baker, you said, and I turned toward you. Hannah, hey. I couldn't believe it. Out of the blue, there you were. I don't know why, you said, but I think we need to talk. And I agreed, with probably the dumbest smile plastered on my face. And then I noticed the door frame behind you leading into the kitchen. It had a bunch of pen and pencil marks scratched on it, keeping track of how fast the children in the house were growing. And I remembered watching my mom erase those marks on our old kitchen door, getting ready to sell the house to move here. Anyway, you looked at my empty cup, poured half of your drink into mine, and asked if now would be a good time to talk. Please don't read into that, people. Yes, it sounds all smooth and get the girl drunk, but it wasn't. It didn't seem that way to me. Because if that was the case, he would have encouraged me to fill my cup all the way. So we walked into the living room where one side of the couch was occupied. But there was plenty of room on the other end, so we sat down. And what was the first thing we did? We set down our cups and started talking. Just like that. Everything I could have hoped for was happening. The questions were personal, as if catching up for the time we let pass. Yet, the questions never felt intrusive. And they weren't intrusive, because I wanted you to know me. It seemed like you could know me, like you could understand anything I told you. And the more we spoke, I knew why. The same things excited us. The same things concerned us. I wanted to tell you everything, and that hurt because some things were too scary. Some things even I didn't understand. How could I tell someone I was really talking to for the first time, everything I was thinking? I couldn't. It was too soon. Or maybe it was too late. Clay, you kept saying that you knew things would flow easily between us. You felt that way for a long time, you said. You knew we'd get along, that we would connect. But how? You never explained that. How could you know? Because I knew what people said about me. I heard all the rumors and lies that will always be part of me. I was breaking. If only I'd talked to you sooner, we could have been, I don't know. Things had gone too far by then. My mind was set. Not on ending my life. Not yet. It was set on floating through school, on never being close to anyone. That was my plan. I'd graduate, then I'd leave. But then I went to a party. I went to a party to meet you. Why did I do that? To make myself suffer? Because that's what I was doing, hating myself for waiting so long. Hating myself because it wasn't fair to you. The couple sitting beside us on the couch, the girl was drunk and laughing and bumping into me every so often, which was funny at first, but got old real fast. I started to think that maybe she wasn't so drunk after all. Maybe it was all a show for the guy she was talking with when they were actually talking. Maybe she wanted the couch all to herself and her guy. So Clay and I left. We walked around the party, shouting over the music wherever we went. Eventually, successfully, I spun the conversation around. No more big and heavy topics. We needed to laugh. But everywhere we went, it was too noisy to hear each other. So we wound up in the doorway to an empty room. While we were standing there, our backs against the door frame, drinks in hand, we couldn't stop laughing. And yet, the loneliness I entered the party with came rushing back. But I wasn't alone. I knew that. For the first time in a long time, I was connected with another person from school. How in the world was I alone? Because I wanted to be. That's all I can say. It's all that makes sense to me. How many times did I let myself connect with someone only to have it thrown back in my face? Everything seemed good, but I knew it had the potential to be awful. Much, much more painful than the others. So there you were, letting me connect with you. And when I couldn't do that anymore, when I pulled the conversation to lighter topics, you made me laugh. And you were hilarious, Clay. You were exactly what I needed. So I kissed you. A long, beautiful kiss. And what did you say when we came up for air? With the cutest, littlest, boyish smirk, you asked, "What was that for?" To which I said, "You're such an idiot." And we kissed some more. Eventually, we shut the door and moved deeper into the room. We were on one side of the door, and the rest of the party, with its loud but muffled music, was on the other. Some of you may be wondering, how come we never heard about this? We always found out who Hannah made out with. Wrong. You only thought you found out. Haven't you been listening? Or did you only pay attention to the tape with your name on it? Because I can count on one hand, yes, one hand, how many people I've made out with. But you probably thought I'd need both hands and both feet just to get started, right? What's that? You don't believe me. You're shocked. Guess what? I don't care. The last time I cared what anyone thought about me was that night. And that was the last night. Now, get comfortable, because I'm about to tell you what happened in that room between Clay and me. Are you ready? We kissed. That's it. We kissed. It was wonderful. Both of us lying on the bed, one of his hands resting on my hip, his other arm cradling my head like a pillow, both of my arms hugging him, trying to pull him closer. And speaking for myself, I wanted more. The kisses felt like first kisses. Kisses that said I could start over if I wanted to. But with him, let's start over from what? And that's when I thought of you, Justin. For the first time in a long time, I thought of our first kiss, my real first kiss. I remembered the anticipation leading up to it. I remembered your lips pressed against mine. And then I remembered how you ruined it. Stop, I told Clay, and my hands stopped pulling him in. Could you feel what I was going through, Clay? Did you sense it? You must have. I shut my eyes so tight it was painful, trying to push away all that I was seeing in my head. And what I saw was everyone on this list, and more. Everyone up to that night, everyone who caused me to be so intrigued by Clay's reputation, how his reputation was so different from mine. And I couldn't help that. What everyone thought of me was out of my control. Clay, your reputation was deserved, but mine was not. And there I was with you, adding to my reputation. Stop, I repeated. This time I moved my hands under your chest and pushed you away. I turned to the side, burying my face in the pillow. You started to talk, but I made you stop. I asked you to leave. You started to talk again, and I screamed. I screamed into the pillow, and then you stopped talking. You heard me. The bed lifted on your side as you got up to leave the room, but it took you forever to leave, to realize that I was serious. Even though my eyes remained shut, buried in the pillow, the light changed when you finally opened the door. It grew brighter, then it faded again, and you were gone. And then I slid off the bed and down to the floor. I just sat there beside the bed, hugging my knees and crying. That, Clay, is where your story ends. You left the room and we never spoke again. In the hallways at school, you tried catching my eye, but I always looked away because that night when I got home, I tore a page from my notebook and wrote down one name after another. The names in my head when I stopped kissing you. There were so many names, Clay. 3 dozen at least. And then I made the connections. I circled your name first, Justin, and I drew a line from you to Alex. I circled Alex and drew a line back to Jessica, bypassing names that didn't connect, that just floated there, incidents all by themselves. My anger and frustration with all of you turned to tears and then back to anger and hate every time I found a new connection. And then I reached Clay, the reason I went to the party. I circled his name and drew a line back to a previous name. In fact, Clay, soon after you left and shut the door, that person reopened it. But that person's already received the tapes. So, Clay, just skip him when you pass them on. In a roundabout way, he caused a new name to be added to this list, and that's who should receive the tapes from you. And yes, Clay, I'm sorry too.